Here's the wind of the pit. Swung on, belted, way back. It might be, it could be, it is. Holy cow, it's time for another edition of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Once again, I am your host, Jeff Candid Cubs Rogowskis, and what an exciting 2 nights of Cubs baseball. Well, exciting might be a strong word. Bailed out by how bad the White Sox are, that might be a little more accurate. It is fun to watch comeback wins, but it is not fun to watch one of the worst teams in baseball put up 5 runs very, very early versus your team and need to come back versus them. It is weird watching these games in hindsight and think that the Cubs didn't necessarily win them as much as the White Sox lost them. But wins are wins, take them how you can get them. And it was nice to not have to live with potential embarrassment of losing to a team that still only has 15 games on the season. That being said, let's start to focus a little bit more on the regular BPTI content. And you all know, if you've been listening for a while, the first thing we do each week is the Box Score Blitz, where we go over the games since the last recording. And since we last recorded, the Cubs had a home series versus Cincinnati Reds and a home series versus the Crosstown rivals. Rivals might be a strong word at this point. The Chicago White Sox. So let's put some time on the fake clock. Talk about the games in 3, 2, 1. Go. Game 1 versus the Reds. The Reds come to town for the first time in 2024. First time we're seeing them in 2024. And Graham Ashcraft is facing Javier Assad, the Ass Man. And guess what? He and Hap so hot. Yes, that's a reference to my tweet that was on Marquee the other night. If you did not see that, he gets things going with a 2-run homer. He's been hot lately. The Reds dink and doink Assad for 2 runs, and we have a tie game very, very quickly. But guess what? Hap Daddy, the man, comes back and gets a bases-loaded walk. Cubs go up 3-2. Drew Smiley comes in, gives up walks to a first batter, and immediately gives up a 2-run home run to Santiago Espinal, and the Reds take the lead. They extend that lead in the top of the 9th with a TJ Friedl single off Hector Neris, but wait, there's fight with this team. Bottom 9th comes PCA singles, Michael Bush Bay gets a walk, and guess what? Craig Counsell has to pinch hit Patrick Wisdom with Nick Madrigal. Still fuming and confused by this. I'm pretty pissed off. He hits the ball on the ground. What a shock. Gets a 1-3 putout, or gets thrown out of first. Only 1 out here. Say it doubles. And the wild inflatable arm 2-man, Mr. Willie Harris, sends Madrigal on this one. Notoriously bad for running. And Ellie De La Cruz, who has a cannon, guns him down at home. There's now 2 outs. And the Cubs are within 1. Belly flies out. There's no joy in Wrigleyville as the mighty Casey strikes out. Just kidding, he flies out. Cubs lose 5-4. Very, very weird end to this game. Game 2 is a Fox broadcast, a national broadcast, and we have a really long rain delay. I really don't understand why this game was played. The Reds and the Cubs play each other enough that they could easily have scheduled this one later in the year. They started this game, and it was clearly still raining pretty hard. Both the pitchers were having trouble with grip as there were a ton of walks. It was Justin Steele versus Hunter Green. Neither one of them looked fantastic, likely because of the elements. And early in this game, Seiya Suzuki drops a routine fly ball in the outfield. They were literally cutting to the in-between innings box score graphic on TV. When the ball drops, they score a bunch of runs. 4 end up scoring in the inning. 3 of them end up being unearned, but guess what? It's redemption, and it's spelled Seiya. Seiya hits a grand slam to tie the game at 4. Cubs score in the bottom of the 3rd to go up 5-4. But shutdowns, innings, are fairy tales that are told to Cub fans at bedtime that make them feel comfortable. Reds come right back and tie it. But when you need a hero, I look to the unofficial captain of the squad, Mr. Lieutenant Dansby. This ball got legs, Lieutenant Dansby. 2-run home run. He's been needing something like this. He has been scuffling. Cubs win 7-5. Bullpen was nails in this one. They went 4 innings pitched, only 3 hits, 6 strikeouts. Game 3, I was there. This is my first Cub game of the year. Had my BPTI hat on, got to talk to a bunch of fans. Madrigal got sent down, Bodie got sent up. I wore my David Bodie McBodie face jersey to the game. Was a conversation piece. It was Ben Brown versus Nick Lodolo. What can Brown do for you? Well, he can hang a curveball and give up a home run to TJ Friedel. It was a 3-run bomb. They scored 4 in the second inning. Cubs got behind early. Wake me up, Mr. Lodolo. He wasn't exactly sharp, but he was enough for the Cubs. They got 7 hits on him spread apart, 3 Ks only. The Cubs left a small village in the base pass, 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position, which is the theme of late. 9 left on base. Cubs lose this series, lose this game 5-2. Monday is an off day, which was much needed. So now it's time for Tuesday. Started the Crosstown Cup or the BP Cup or whatever the hell it's called. I'm not even sure anymore. The crowd was fire. You can tell that the White Sox fans brought it, even though that they might not have seen their team much this year, nor have they seen their record. It was Showtime Imanaga versus Chris Flexen, and sure, it wasn't that bad, but his batting came on an extremely tough error to watch from Mr. Morrell, who was trying to turn a double play, lets the ball hit his glove and roll away. Corey Lee hits a double, and then Sosa, not Sammy Sosa, Lennon Sosa, hits a home run, and it's 5-0 Sox. Then a rain delay. Feel familiar? Cubs come out swinging, and redemption today is spelled M-O-R-E-L. Mr. Christopher Morrell crushes a 3-run homer. It's now 5-3. Happer gets on base. Wisdom pinch hits for Michael Busch in this one, the face lefty. He takes an outside changeup out, and it's now 5-5. Mr. Cubs killer Luis Robert stops the party immediately, crushes a 109.8 mile per hour, 448-foot home run to take the lead at 6-5. But guess what? Hap Daddy delivers. He gets a 2-run double in the 8th and 7-6 Cubs. As Pat Hughes always tells us, we fastened our seatbelts. Naris makes me slam down more tums than one should ever take. He walks Colas, the new speed demon that got called up. Duke Ellis pinch runs and steals. He tells people before the game that he's not afraid to get picked off. He gets picked off as he's a little bouncy at second base, and the call from the dugout gets a clutch out here. Cubs survive. They win 7-6. The White Sox get their 12th straight loss. And guess what? Game 2 is this deja vu all over again. It's Jameson Taillon versus Eric Fetty, and this one was very similar to the night before. First pitch of the game, Jolks hit a home run. The Cubs are down 1-0 right away. White Sox put together a dink and doink and some hard line drives off Taillon, and all of a sudden it's 5-1. Nico Horner gets tossed for the first time in his career in this game on 2 terrible strike calls, as we get to see the ump show, because that's what everybody pays to come and see. And let's give me something. The walkabout. The Cubs walk in some runs in this game, and then let's give me something to balk about. Cubs get some balks that lead to some extra runs. Ian Happ comes up again and gives the Cubs a 6-5 lead in the 7th. The first batter of the 8th, Mr. Paul DeJong, the old Cardinal shortstop. He ties the game on a crushed home run. Unreal. Just another not shut down inning. Second pitch of the 9th. From Cub trade target Michael Kopech to Mike Talkman. Let's give me something to talkman about. Talk about a walk-off. Cubs sweep the Crosstown Cup, win both games 7-6, and that's our box score blitz. So yeah, very, very exciting games with the Chicago White Sox in the last few nights, and it had a really fun energy at Wrigley, but yeah, there was something missing there in regards to me feeling like I was having fun, because these were games that I felt like finally could have been easy wins for the Cubs. They did not end up being easy wins. This has been a stretch where even when the Cubs have been winning ball games, it has not looked fluid. It has not looked easy. It has not looked fun. So hoping that the offense can wake up. The Cubs are going on a 7-game road trip, 4 in Cincinnati this weekend. They're going to be seeing Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Mr. Abbott, and Frankie Montas in this series. Maybe Jordan Wicks, who had a bullpen session the other day, will be pitching this series this weekend. Should be Assad, Ben Brown, Imanaga, and maybe Wicks. We will see how this pans out. And then the Cubs immediately go to St. Petersburg to play the Tampa Bay Rays. So technically 2 teams under 500. So some opportunity as the Cubs sit at 500 to build on that record. So let's take a look at the hot stove standings for the week. And before we do that, I want to take some time to thank our sponsor, Wrigleyville Sports. I was at Wrigleyville Sports this weekend as part of the game, picked up the Cubs hat that has the Big League Chew inspiration for the curveball cotton candy. My Big League Chew of choice back when I was a kid. Was happy to go in there and support the store that has supported this podcast. what a great store. I was very disappointed to see a different branded merchandise store put across the street from them. Support small business, support Wrigleyville Sports. I've been going to Wrigleyville Sports much longer than I care to admit, as I have hit up there nearly every time I leave a Cub game, as I used to take the red line a lot when I would go home. But if you do look in the description of this podcast, there's a link to Wrigleyville Sports Store. Go shopping, find some Cub stuff, find some sock stuff. I doubt you want sock stuff. Find some Bear stuff, Bulls, whatever Chicago team you're looking for. And before you check out, use code BRICKS10. And BRICKS10 will give you 10% off of your cart. And thank you, Wrigleyville Sports, for continuing to be a sponsor of this podcast. So, with the standings this week, the Cubs have been floating around 500. It's nice to see that they are 500 currently. The Brewers have been playing very good baseball. They're leading this division and had some separation starting to be created by them. They're 5.5 up on the Cubs, who are 5 games up. They are 31 and 31. The Brewers are 36 and 26. The Cardinals are 29 and 31, right behind the Cubs. The Reds are 29 and 33, and the Pirates are 28 and 30, or 29 and 32. So, to date, when I recorded this, I did not include it in this box score blitz. We'll go through it next week. The Cubs did just lose to the Reds, so these standings will be updated by the time I get the image. The Cubs are now 31 and 32, and the Reds are 30 and 30. So, technically, they're still in the wild card hunt. Not technically, the Cubs absolutely are in the wild card hunt. It's really early to start talking about things like the wild card, but it is a way into the playoffs, and all you have to do is get in, as we saw with the 2023 Diamondbacks, who took that wild card spot and got all the way to the World Series before eventually losing to the Texas Rangers. But one thing I do want to talk about today, in the spirit of the school year ending, is I thought we'd give the Cubs a report card. Yes, my kids finished school this week and are off for the summer, as many of you who have children probably also are dealing with kids finally being off of school. And this feels like always the official start of a lot of people's attention in baseball. But I always think of it at the end of the year, you're getting ready for the next grade, and the last thing you get is a report card. So as we sit here, 63 games into the season, I think it's time to kind of evaluate the Cubs on a grading scale. And the way that I looked at this is I looked at different parts of the team: the offense, the defense, starting pitching, relief pitching, and an overall grade. So let's start with the offense. And I'm sure lots of folks can get a pretty good idea of what these grades are going to be. They're not going to be strong given some of the performances, but there's some noise in there that makes me think that things can get better. And also they do have a deadline, a trade deadline, in which the team can get active and address some of the deficiencies. So let's start with the offense. Currently, they rank 21st in baseball with a 97 weighted run created plus. So 3% below the average run creation. Not great. 21st in baseball is not where you want to be. That's not going to win you a lot of games. It feels like the Cubs offense, especially in that 10 and 18 stretch in May, just disappeared. And why is that? Well, we can point to a number of things. First of all, the Cubs have not necessarily been healthy a good chunk of this year, especially in May. There's a stretch they went without Bellinger. We had an injury with Nico Horner where he didn't make the IL, but he was sidelined with a hamstring issue for a bit. Dansby Swanson had the knee injury, has not really hit, has been hitting the ball at an extremely high rate on the ground, more than he has in his career, has not really started to slug or lift the ball. We've seen some signs in the last few games of him driving the ball the other way and hitting that home run in the victory versus the Reds the other night. So hopefully that's the start of something. Cody Bellinger has looked a bit swingy at the plate. He's been swinging a lot. His plate appearances have been very short, has been not getting great contact. And we all know the well documented by several Cub pundits, the insane unluckiness of Christopher Morel. So the culmination of all these things leads to an offense that has been spotty. Just they have not looked good. They've been especially bad with running in scoring positions. And going in this offseason, Sean and I, when we had talked about the Cubs, one of my big concerns was the team's ability to slug. And one of my continued concerns is the lack of a true star in this offense. It is really hard to kind of look at this team and not wonder where we would be without Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger hasn't been the superstar that he was for a stretch last year, which he didn't get really going until parts of June and then really into July as the Cubs got really hot. But without him being a superstar, this team kind of slides into a much more challenging spot offensively, as they really need some guys to perform where they're expected or slightly above where they're expected for them to push across runs and to perform and to drive the ball and get slugging. So currently they're 17th in baseball in home runs with 61. They're slugging only 371 as a team, which is 8th worst. So that puts them at 22nd in baseball. And this is a slugging league. There's a lot of games, especially in teams we've been playing of late, that are decided by home runs, like 3-run homers, 2-run homers, and that can really change a game quickly. And for the Cubs to have scored without that slug, they really need to stack together hits, and they're just not getting a ton of hits lately. They currently have the 6th worst BABIP, the batting average on balls in play. They're only at 276, which I'm not sure really if that is that important. The league average this year is 288, so they are below the league average in BABIP. They were at 297. The league average is 297 in 2023, and the Cubs were at 303 as a BABIP in 2023. So it's a lot of the same cast, and that BABIP is probably driven down by Morel's intense bad luck of balls that haven't been able to drop, and the Cubs' propensity, especially guys like Dansby, who don't generally do as much as he's done hitting in the ground, that's really going to drive that average down. So hopefully this is a sign that there is more offense that can come from this group. And there's a lot of talent in this room. There's a lot of talent on this team. They should be able to hit better than they have. They absolutely should. At some point, Christopher Morel should erupt and be just crazy, crazy hot. Similar to Ian Happ having locked in the last few weeks after he had a break. It really seemed to turn around after a pinch hitting appearance in St. Louis. Christopher Morel needs a few games, and he's started to hit and drive the ball the other way, in which he can start to feel confident again. Really, a black hole in this lineup is the catching core. And this isn't just defensively, which we went over in last week's episodes of BBTI when we looked at trade targets for catchers. Miguel Amaya is at a 53 weighted runs created plus, and Gomes is at 15. They only have 3 walks combined between the two of them. That's just not... It's not going to do it. And if they're not throwing base runners out, which they're not, and they're not blocking well, pop times well below average, Cubs really need to address the catching position. I'm going to give the offense a D. They just need to do more. And it's really put a lot of stress on this pitching staff, which could explain some of the numbers of the pitching staff, as this bullpen has been pretty overused, as they have had to play a lot of close games as the team's just not scoring. One positive I'll say about the offense is they have a walk rate of 9.3%, which is 4th in baseball. So there seems to be, some pretty solid plate discipline here. The strikeout rate isn't nearly as high, but as in high ranking as in top 4, but it's above mid-pack. And 4th in baseball in walk rate puts them on the level as really, really good offenses like the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Phillies, who are all playing very good baseball at very good records. So hopefully that walk rate translates into better hitting for the Cubs going forward. So let's talk about the defense. And I think this is going to be an extremely quick conversation. The defense has been a letdown. That is supposed to be the identity of this team. Dansby Swanson has 4 errors this year already, 2 throwing, 2 fielding. He had 11 all of last year. It's not like he's on pace to have a ton more, but he did miss a stretch in there. he at times has not looked that sharp. That arm strength has played a factor in maybe not errors, but clearly plays that are close at first base that he has not gotten because the ball has not gotten there quick enough. Morel has been a mixed bag at third base. He has been either really hard to watch, even in the eye test, and then at other times he's looked serviceable to better than serviceable. And the commentary always had been going into the season was that he needed to be serviceable because we were expecting the bat to play. And as he continues to kind of have really bad luck at the plate, with the bat not playing and the glove being bad, it's not a great situation. And Seiya Suzuki has really ironed himself into a DH role. He has at times just looked lost in the outfield. I'm not sure. Eye test wise, I don't know if it's a route thing, him taking off his eye off the ball, trying to do too much. It's just very strange when it comes together and the bad things happen. The drop the other night, the drop in Atlanta last year. It's just the arm strength too doesn't seem to be that great. I always had thought that he had a solid arm out there, but there have been some plays at the plate where I feel like it would have been a little bit closer, and he's not getting the ball there, and that's very frustrating. I'm going to give the defense right now a D minus because I had such high expectations for that to be such a lockdown part of this team. Them being as sloppy as they have defensively has been super concerning. So let's go to the pitching, and we'll start with the starting pitching. The starting pitching started the season as a mash unit because we lost Justin Steele after his first start. We started the season with a back injury with Jameson Taillon, and we've gotten nothing out of Hendricks. I'm sorry, Kyle. I've got to say, we've not gotten much out of you. We had a one okay-ish start versus the Pirates, and they saw you again, and they lit you up like a Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. There's just not much left in the bag. When you do come in the game, I'm very, very concerned as if the game is close, I know it's no longer going to be close. There needs to be a very tough conversation. I feel like the Cubs are trying to drag it out to that service time thing. There's that theory of the Kerry Wood send-off that I want for him so bad, but using him in this bullpen, waiting for other guys to get healthy, they've had to use the bullpen a lot, and having a guy like him out there as an option just doesn't feel like the smartest choice roster-wise. We can have a longer conversation about that another day. But Brown and Assad have been revelations. Brown has been great in the rotation. He had that near no-hitter in Milwaukee the other week. He didn't have the best start versus Cincinnati, but it really came down to one hanging curveball, and that really was the end of his day. He still had 6 strikeouts in his start the other day. His curveball is truly unique. His fastball. There's a really good article in Marquee about some of the unique I would say processes he goes through, including taping his mouth shut when he sleeps. So check it out. There's some really unique things about Ben Brown. It's over on Marquee's website. Imanaga has been better than we ever thought. Yes, he's had a clunker here and there of late. He had a bunch of runs given up the other night, but that was attributed to an error by Morel that led to a much longer inning, which led to some damage. But he's still been great. He's still very likely going to be an all-star for the Cubs this year. His starting pitching overall has been pretty solid, and I tried to isolate the starting pitchers. I know we've had some Wisniewski starts in there. We've had some other guys, so I just took the stats of guys that had been starting a little bit more. So Ben Brown, Jameson Taillon, Javier Assad, Jordan Wicks, who hasn't started in a while, and Justin Steele, and Shota Imanaga to take a look at some of their stats. And as a group, they've had a 3.02 ERA, about 9 Ks per 9, and about 2.7 walks per 9. That's been a very solid group. That is something to be proud of, especially given the lack of starts we've gotten from guys like Justin Steele in that data, who's started to look a little sharper, had that rain game the other day, had really looked good in his start versus Milwaukee, and Shota Imanaga has been so great. So it's nice to see the rotation, play as well as it has. Now, looking at the bullpen, the one thing that sticks out to me And I know there's some noise in this data that I pulled as well, knowing that, at this point, I have Wisniewski in there who's thrown more innings because he's also started. But I do have like Jose Cuas. The Cubs have had 25 different pitchers make appearances this year. One of them is Patrick Wisdom. The other one's Matt Mervis. So still 23 pitchers this year as they have battled some injuries. And yeah, it stinks because the Cubs have not really been able to get, I would say, like a regular group together and get, some guys cemented in the roles. This bullpen very, very early on lost Julian Merriweather, who was excellent, excellent for this team last year. And him getting hurt, he's starting to ramp it up. But him getting hurt was such a big loss because he was a swing and miss factor. He was potentially, if things had gone awry with Edward Alzolay, the guy that probably slots in as closer. You go to the end of the game and you look at Craig Counsell as the option of deploying Lights Out and Julian Merriweather and whoever at closer, or even with Merriweather, you got Merriweather, Lights Out, Alzolay, and Neris. Like, we're having a different conversation about end of games, and then you're covering just some additional innings with some of the other guys that the Cubs have. But Yancy Almonte being hurt, Jose Cuas looking like a pitching machine, just a lot of things have gone wrong. And the bullpen has pitched, about 49% of the Cubs' innings this year, which is a lot. That's a bullpen that has seen a lot of innings. And some of that is probably due to some openers and stuff while guys were hurt. The other part is the Cubs have had to deploy guys from this bullpen to keep games that they were leading close. And they've played some extra inning games in there. And the big stat is the 13 blunt saves in 27 tries. That's a lot of wins left on the table. And that's tough to swallow, especially when the stretch that got out of hand in the last few weeks in May, it's tough not to look at that. So I'm going to give the bullpen a C- and the starting staff an A. I'm going to give them an A. They've been great. They really have. And they've kept Cubs in games. They've gotten the team some wins when I feel like they should have gotten some wins. And overall, the pitching staff, I think, has been a B-, with that bullpen really kind of dragging them down. So overall, I'm going to give this Cubs team a C-. And the only reason that they're that high is because they are still within reach of a wild card spot, which the goal is to get in. Should they have done more this offseason? Probably. Should they have addressed this roster in different ways, used money? Should we be having conversation about how they're using the CBT? Yep, probably. But I think we're going to have those conversations in the offseason because right now they still have an opportunity to use another transaction period to make this roster better as long as they can stay afloat. The question is whether or not they're going to be able to stay afloat. And that's going to come down with if the offense can wake up a little bit and have them win some easy games that can give this bullpen some rest. And then addressing the black hole offensively and defensively at catcher and finding a few more arms for this bullpen. So I was really excited for this week's episode because we were able to get Miguel Esparza from, he is the Spanish play-by-play announcer for the Cubs. I reached out to him on Twitter and asked if he wanted to come on to the show, and he agreed, and I was really excited to talk to him. If you are not familiar with Miguel Esparza, you should check out his Twitter account at Miguel's Voice. He has some of the coolest viral clips from Cub games of him doing his like home run calls and game winners and big moments in Cub games, but obviously he's the Spanish announcer, so it's in Spanish, and there's an extra flair, there's extra passion in there that comes with this, and it's been really cool to see the Cubs adopt a Spanish announcer. As our conversation, I learned that this wasn't something the Cubs have always had, and currently it's only available for Cub home games, and we did make a joke, but it is one thing that I think we should take seriously. There should be a petition for him to be able to work all 162, so Cubs fans in the Latin community can enjoy Cub games like we all get to do in multiple ways, because there are multiple English broadcasts, radio and television for us. So with a game that does have a large contingency of Latin American players, there should be more Spanish broadcasts. So that's something that I feel like needs to happen. And he said that we need to get that trending. So I implore you to do so. But without further ado, here's my conversation I had today with Miguel Esparza, the Spanish play-by-play announcer for our beloved Cubbies.
Una bola hacia los strikes. Swing de por el norte, la manda volando hacia el jardín central. ¡Fue! ¡Home run! ¡La botó! Y los Chicago Cubs ganan el partido. Marcador final 7-6.
All right, Brickheads, thanks for sticking around. Today we have special guest Miguel Esparza, our Spanish play-by-play announcer for the Cubs. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is a really exciting thing for me. I know that my introduction to you was probably some of the more viral moments in recent years with the Cubs and walk-offs and the adoption of your play-by-play getting shared on Twitter. And I've seen it on TikTok and stuff as well. And, I think as someone who is a huge sports fan like myself, there's like those moments in, soccer and other places across the world where there just seems to be more fire and passion in announcing, especially when it's in a different language than sometimes there is in the United States. And I think that adoption has been very much seen by the Cubs fans. And I think it's so cool that that is something that the Cubs have done, and it's something the Cubs are continuing to promote.
Thank you. No, it's. I'm a Cubs fan. I was born and raised in Chicago, so I feel this team. It's my team. I've always been a Cubs fan. So the passion that I bring to what I do is because I feel it. I feel those wins and I feel those losses.
Yeah, which the passion is what makes the announcing special, and I think. I will say, on behalf of other Cub fans, like you have become another voice of very special voices that the Cubs have and their broadcasting crew. And right there with, Boog and Pat Hughes as well. I think after, especially, dating this recording after last night's walk-off home run, it's one of the first things I look for is I'm like, all right, where's Miguel's walk-off? Where's Pat's? And then where's Boog? And I listen to all three and I share all three. Honestly, just adrenaline chasing because I'm just as excited about the moment as you probably were.
Yeah, no. And you talk about adrenaline, you get home, you can't sleep. That's just the reality when you have games like those. It's very hard to go to sleep once you get home after just unwinding. You try as much as you can, but the energy is just the energy of the ballpark, and it's just it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's as someone who's just watching on TV, I struggle. These bags under my eyes are not just from my 5 and 7-year-old; they're from me living every moment at every game.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I think we'll start today with just kind of a simple question. I just kind of want to hear about your baseball story, and it sounds like it's a Cubs story. Can you just tell us like how you were introduced to the game, how you were introduced to the Cubs, and a little bit of about your fandom then?
Yeah, so Cubs for me, like I said, that's the only team that I knew growing up when it came to baseball. And it's not a knock on the White Sox, but that was just a reality, right? That's the team that I knew. That's the team that my father took me to Wrigley Field to watch, right? So it was just that. It was my dad taking me to Wrigley Field. And I remember, during the Cubs games, like right pre-game, they play a video that it's narrated by Bill Murray. And he explains how when he came up and he saw, and I can tell you that was my exact same feeling when I just walked up and I saw the field. It was just mesmerizing. And to this day, every day that I go to Wrigley and I go up there and I see it, it's like it just blows my mind that I get to be there, right? That I get to go to work at Wrigley Field. So yeah, it all started with that. My father took me to Wrigley, and then just these are games that we watched throughout the years, going together the game to different games. Just recently, I think it was dating this again, but Jason Hayward a couple of years ago walked it off on a Grand Slam. I think to the date, I think it was like 2018 or something like that. I was at that game. I was there as a fan, so I was still not in the booth. I was filling in a couple of games here and there, but that day, I was in the stand. So, just to get from that point to now where I am broadcasting all the home games for the Chicago Cubs, and it's just very special to be able to be a part of.
So how did you get started then? Obviously, it sounds like, the Spanish broadcasts are a little bit newer. Was this, pre-marquee, or did it start with marquee, and how did they find you?
It was pre-marquee. They've had the broadcast for many years, but it was just a handful of games. So it wasn't like now that we broadcast all the home games. So you're talking about, when I say a handful, maybe 9 a season, 20. I think at the last time I remember was like 22 games. And then when the 2021 season, prior to that, the company I was working with, they came to an agreement with the Cubs to do all the home games. So for me, that was great, right? Because also, not that only did they come to that agreement, but because I was filling in between 2018, 19 pandemic year, I broadcast for the White Sox. And then, that pretty much helped me to get the gig here, where they were like, okay, well, let's put Miguel on the Cubs broadcast. And from there, the rest was just like you mentioned. It was a big moment. It was Javi Baez walk-off center field against Amir Garrett. That was the first time I ever recorded something, and I put that on Twitter, and it just caught fire, right? And so from there on out, it just started putting more eyes on what we do, and more ears on our broadcast, to the point where that agreement became where we have the SAP option on Marquee Sports Network now. We're also on the MLB app. So it just opened up so many doors by just recording my reaction and my call and posting it on Twitter. That's why you and me are talking right now, right?
Exactly. There you go. It's a small world, I think after games, we're all chasing, those moments again, and just having another perspective. So, is it especially meaningful to you growing up as, a Latino individual, being able to bring baseball to a community that is well represented in the game, but maybe even as well represented in options, and be able to watch the games in the language that is, probably spoken more than English on this planet?
It's special. It really is, because, when you talk about our broadcast, the fact that we're on SAP option, on Marquee, and on the MLB app, it opened up the world to us. Because initially, if you're in Chicago, you could listen to us on your radio, which is 1200 AM, but you don't have to be in Chicago to listen to the Cubs broadcast in Spanish when we're broadcasting at home, because we're on those different platforms. Opening day, it blew my mind, because I already knew from last year where I would get messages from different people around the world, but this year, opening day specifically, I opened up my broadcast, welcomed everyone, and then I threw out my social media out there, and my partner at the time that was broadcasting with me, and I just said, hey, let us know where you guys are listening from. I was flooded with messages from around the world. You're talking about Italy, London, Spain, Nicaragua, Panama. Miguel Amaya's parents listen to the broadcast in Spanish.
Cool.
You have Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. It just blew my mind, because they were just coming in Venezuela. It was just amazing to see the reach, and that just ups a little bit, right? That responsibility that I have every day and every game to make sure that I bring the best broadcast to our people that are listening.
And I think it's, as a Cub fan, it brings me some comfort, that there's additional access for fans that speak a different language to get the Cub games. Obviously, we were talking a little bit before recording. The dream is to have it for all 162, so
Right.
that there's more options. But the fact we're already at 81.
Go on Twitter and ask out there to get the Spanish broadcast, all 162.
There you go. Let's do it. Let's start a campaign.
Yeah.
But so you grew up a Cubs fan. Do you have a favorite all-time Cubs player?
For me, it's Kerry Wood. What Kerry was able to do, that just the magic that he brought.
Oh.
It was just one of those that I always, yeah, there I see it, yeah. So it was always Kerry for me. As much as I love Sammy, and I have here, let me show mine here, my Sammy autograph bat.
Oh, that's really cool. Guys
Yeah,
who are
so
listening on the podcast only, check out the video to see some pretty cool Cub merch.
yeah. So that was a gift, Christmas gift from my broadcast partner. He knows how much I love Sammy, but for me, it was definitely Kerry Wood. Just what he was able to do, and he brought hope to the team. Right, he brought hope that we were going to get there, and unfortunately, obviously, we all know it didn't happen. But he was it. It was Kerry Wood for me, and I was able to meet him last year. I believe I took a picture with him, and for me, that was cool. Just being able to walk out in the press cafeteria and see Kerry Wood, I was like, I need a picture. Like, there's no way I'm going to let him go and not take a picture with Kerry Wood, right?
Is it challenging in your role now to not like fanboy when you see certain people, or is it something that like
Yeah.
it's just become so much part of your day that like you're desensitized?
No. It's hard because once again, I'm a fan, right? So I broadcast for the Cubs, the Blackhawks, the Bulls. I was doing Bears until this year. I'm not doing Bears this year. And I could be at Wrigley, I could be at the United Center, and I could be in an elevator with last year for the last All-Star game for NBA, which was recently. I was in an elevator with Bill Walton, and unfortunately he just passed, right? But one of the nicest people that you would ever meet, and somebody said, "Mr. Walton," he said, "No, I'm just Bill." And you take those experiences, but at the same time you're like, man, I wish I could take a picture, get an autograph, but I can't do that, right? That's where I can't, I can't cross that line, and I have to be professional.
Yeah, I think I would, in a dream world where PBTI gets bigger, that would be probably the hardest thing for me because I have fans so hard for so long that, meeting those types of people, I would immediately
Right.
be 8, 9 years old with my marker and a ball, like outside of Wrigley again.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's gonna be so tough. So you've been able to call a number of Cub games. Do you have a favorite game that you've called? And then counter to that, what is your favorite game of all time as a fan?
Favorite game was Game 7. I cried. That was just, oh man,
Me too.
just getting to that point, right? And finally being able to see your team win that World Series, that was just amazing. As a broadcaster, there's so many now that I've been in for a couple of years, but I'll always say Christopher Morel's his debut, and just being a part of his story in a certain way. And I've told this to Morel. I'm like, look, you've been a blessing to me without you even knowing, because just having that opportunity to call something so special for a player, and then at the same time it became so special for me, and so that helped create that relationship. And the Cubs productions, they created one of those beautiful documentaries that they have, and they did one on Morel's first home run, and they used a lot of my broadcasts within that. And now that I talk to Morel, like he'll ask, "Hey, did you get that home run call?" And he'll ask me for the video, and so little things like that connection was made because of that home run. And then last year, obviously his home run against the White Sox, that walk off, so those are always very special. And then this year, Michael Bush, with that walk off for my birthday, that was great. So there's so many so there's so many that last year for my birthday, I was able to sing the 14th inning stretch. That it was like, what, but so to pick one, it's very difficult. But there have been so many in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think there's it's been a nice run of competitive baseball on the north side, and hopefully, we're in the beginning of another long run. So it's gonna be easier to kind of make those memories, and for us Cub fans too, it's gonna be easier for us to find your calls as these big moments get immortalized in so many different ways. So do you have a bucket list Cubs person that you would like to meet that you haven't met, or a bucket list game you'd like to call?
I'd say to meet Sammy Sosa. I would definitely love to meet Sammy. And I know when he was here a couple of months ago, I was like, man, I wish I could have been able to meet. I didn't get the connection to do so. But again, going back, I don't know if I meet Sammy, if I'm going to be able to contain myself, right? And so at the same time, it's like I don't know. Do I want to meet Sammy? Because Sammy was very special, regardless of what everyone says. He was so special to the team, and to involving us within the sport. I remember I would go after every morning. My the first thing that I would do was go find that newspaper to see where that chase was. Did McGuire hit a home run? Did Sammy hit a home run? That was just so magical for the sport that I would love to be able to meet Sammy at some point. And when it comes to game, I know Yankees are coming up. That's going to be special when Anthony Rizzo comes in. So I'm excited for that. That's going to be something else. I know it's going to go crazy at Wrigley.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to see him back. I think, not to go down this train, but, it's weird watching that 2016 team kind of slowly fall apart as guys got moved
Yeah,
and not re-signed. And, I think he's one of the players that I wish they kept around as, you look at first base production since he's left,
right.
and he's been a solid player, and just what he has done for the children's hospitals and such locally and charity, and what he was for the organization. It's weird seeing these guys in different uniforms, so that'll be special to see him back at Wrigley. So the 2024 Cubs, currently as we record, they're back at 500. They just
Right.
escaped a very challenging May, which ironically was the same challenging May they had last year, 10 and 18, both the last 2 years. What do you think of this year's group, and what are your thoughts going forward? Is this, in your eyes, a playoff team that has like underachieved or struggled, or are there some bigger issues that you're concerned about?
Well, I definitely believe in this group. There's a great group of guys, and I have the opportunity to go in the clubhouse and see these guys, right? And you see them in their element. You see how they interact. You see that they like each other, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for anything. Like right now, my broadcast crew, I like them all, and we like each other. So that's why I feel that our broadcast is fun. And I don't say this; people say it, right? And it's because of that we have that chemistry, we have that relationship, and I feel that same way about this group. And yeah, May was just horrible, right? And they struggled. I believe in all these guys. I just feel that mentally there's something there that has to click for all of them. And once that happens, we're good. Now where I'm worried is the catcher, right? And I like what Miguel Amaya does behind the plate. However, if he can't get those runners out, you're just automatically giving a single, you convert that into a double, and that becomes the problem, right? So if you can't get runners out, I think that's to me that's the biggest thing. I'm not too big about I need him to start hitting. If you get a hit here and there, it's good, but I rather have that catcher that can throw out these runners, right? I think that's way more important to me. And so those are little things. The other day in the clubhouse, I heard one player, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but one player, yeah, and because I'm always listening, right? So one player, he's telling one of the young players who had a bad day at the ballpark, and he just said, "Listen, you're lacking confidence." And to hear that, for me, that was very refreshing to hear a veteran, just calling this guy out and saying, "Listen, you're lacking confidence in yourself, and not only during the game, but also in the early meeting that we had." So I hear that, and that's key, right? Because he's showing that leadership and saying, "Listen, you need to believe in yourself because you have it." So I feel, like I said, I go back to, I think this is a very good group. Yes, we could add something down the line, but right now it's just getting these guys back on track.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Catcher is something on last week's episode. I talked about needs of improvement, and for me, I played catcher as a kid in baseball. It was always one of my favorite positions. But yeah, the defense is the thing that I really want back there, especially
Yeah,
as we go forward in the NL Central. You'll get the Brewers and the Reds, especially. They're very athletic on the base pass, and catching those runs.
Forget about the Pirates. You know, you got the Pirates.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you got the Reds. These guys are all looking to steal bases, and then you need to stop them. You know, you have to. And unfortunately, that hasn't been it for us. Neither Jan or Miguel.
It's hopefully something that gets addressed probably in a trade of some sort, which, you know, obviously you're not wishing guys to be moved off a roster,
Right.
and Miguel's still very young and has
Oh, yeah.
some development to do, but yeah, right now what they're providing is just not enough for the club.
Yeah, you know, I spent too. Javier saw a couple of, what was it, last year sometime, I believe, and he spoke very highly of Miguel Amaya. He's like, this guy is you know, a legit catcher, and so they believe within the organization that Miguel will take him to the future. So I still think that that's just a matter of that development that needs to happen for Miguel.
Yeah, and I think like one thing you said kind of sticks out to me too so far about this team, and I think it has to potentially do with the, you know, the rut they're in is, you know, they've seemed very tight. Like the team itself is, you know, they don't seem loose. They don't seem to be having as much fun. These White Sox games have been refreshing, regardless of
Yeah.
you know how you feel, how they happen. To kind of see them let loose a little bit, get the walk-off wins. You know, hopefully that kind of shakes some things. Because besides that, you know, I'm wondering if a little bit of expectations and such, like you change a manager after you barely miss the playoffs. I feel like players feel things like that. They think,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, well, that was the reason, and that's what they think the reason is. So we're here to do this, and maybe there's been some pressing and such. You know, there's a lot of numbers on this team right now that are going to normalize, and they're going to be a better baseball team. Christopher
agree.
Burrell being one of the unluckiest hitters on the planet, and
yeah.
you know, I think just looking at some of their offensive numbers and such today, they're a better team than they've played, and you know, hopefully, Ian Happ always turns into Barry Bonds when he goes to Great American Ballpark. So hopefully he can carry forward.
Yeah, and he's been doing good. You know, you look at him and you see he's starting to heat up, doing good. Taylor McGregor had a great interview with him. I believe it was after the Sox game, and he spoke about, you know, how it was a pinch hit at bat that he had in St. Louis that kind of made it click for him. And you know that it was very refreshing to hear that from a player, and that just tells you, you know, they're all looking to change this and be able to do it. So I think honestly I do think we'll be good.
Yeah, I think it's easy as a Cubs fan to get stuck on Twitter in the echo chamber of like all this negativity. And, you know, a month ago people wanted Ian Happ shipped off to the sun, and now everybody's singing his praises as he's had just a really nice stretch of late, which, you know, would be expected because he has just been a very solid, consistent baseball player for the Cubs. Well, Miguel, thank you so much for your time today. If you're looking for Miguel's stuff, check him out on Twitter. He's at Miguel's Voice. Check out all of his shared clips of some of the bigger Cup moments the last few years. They're littered all over Twitter, littered all over his Twitter. Anything you have going on that you want to plug?
No, just that. Just to go ahead, follow me on Twitter. Let's start a campaign to get all 162 games in Spanish.
There we go. Let's do it. You're here to hear first. Thanks so much, Brickheads, for sticking around for a special interview. And thank you, Miguel. Hopefully we talk to you again soon.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Well, that'll do it for this week on Bricks Behind the Ivy. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. And if you're listening to this in the audio, please check us out on YouTube as there's some extra bells and whistles, especially this week with Miguel showing us some of his Sammy Sosa memorabilia. Like, subscribe, and review. We're still in the middle of our YouTube subscribers contest. Once we get to 50 subscribers, a lucky winner who comments under this week's episode or last week's episode with hashtag Brickhead will receive a Bricks Behind the Ivy merch prize pack. And if we get to 100 subscribers, one of the individuals who puts hashtag Brickheads under one of our episodes, all the newer episodes after episode 18, will receive a Bricks Behind the Ivy prize pack, and they will also receive a pair of my Cup tickets. So get over there and subscribe today. If you're listening to podcasts, review, like, share, so we can grow our audience and support this podcast. As you can see, check out our merch store. Today, I am wearing one of the Bricks Behind the Ivy t-shirts. So check those out. There's a link in the description so that you can get one of these bad boys yourself or try to win them by subscribing. So until then, go Cubs. Hope we can be talking about a bunch of wins next week. Talk to you later, Brickheads. Have a good night.